Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. You are here today for STEAM-powered learning, 5 fast tracks to a creative classroom. My name is Kim Harding, and I'm a learning specialist here at the Van Andel Institute for Education. And today we are going to jump in and see if we can bring even more creativity into our classrooms in a meaningful way. To get us started today, I want to let you know that we do have a resource for you that is going to be put in the chat. This kind of is just a guide through our webinar today. It also has some links to resources that I will be discussing throughout the webinar, so you have those at your fingertips when you're ready to explore them. Also today, Robin is joining us behind the scenes to make sure everything goes well. So do you want to say hi, Robin?
Cheers. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us and happy early Thanksgiving.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. Yes, I hope everyone had a great day today and they're ready to jump in and wrap their brain around creativity. Before we get there, I want to talk about today's sponsor. I'm very excited about this. So here at Van Andel Institute for Education, we have loads of teachers that work here every day. We're working with students. We are developing content, and the sponsor today, the Educator Studio, is a great place to go for different resources and tools, some samples, some free materials and tools to use in your classroom. And I'm just so excited to talk about them today. And I will be kind of showcasing a couple of things that you could find there throughout the webinar today. So hopefully that becomes something very useful for you that you can kind of just bookmark and go to when you are in need of ideas or tools or resources in your classroom. All right. Our goals today are to kind of reignite joy and creative learning in your classroom. You could have the most joyous creative classroom right now, but I feel like there are always new ways to bring more of that in, connect with more kids on that level, and hopefully exploring these 5 fast tracks today will put you just one step closer to getting every kiddo engaged in a creative way in your classroom. I would love to know who is here today. This helps me as I work through the webinar to address different grade bands. So if you wouldn't mind to take a minute to just click on your grade band, I would greatly appreciate that.
All right, Kim, I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds and then shut it down.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. So we've got a pretty good elementary spread. We're at 40% K2 and 40% 3-5, followed by 20% for 6-8 and 9-12.
Wonderful. All right, let me get my screen back up for you guys. It likes to turn off there. All right, thank you so much, Robin. All right, so our first fast track is Start with Wonder. So this just gets kids engaged. If you are doing something that they're already curious about or something that they have verbally expressed to you that they are wondering about, it is a really great place to start to get them thinking creatively and into that thought process of really kind of going beyond their own walls. So in the past in my classroom, I have used just a basic wonder wall, a bulletin board, any part of the wall that I could find where students were invited to pin up their wonders. And you can do that with sticky notes, they can do it with a piece of scrap paper and tape. But these are questions that pop up, and maybe they pop up at a time where you don't have the time in that moment to address that with a kiddo, but you don't want them to lose that either, that thinking. Another way to start with wonder is in your morning meetings, kind of ignite that creative thought process in your kiddos. The picture here on this slide, I want to connect with this morning meeting. This was a class meeting, not in the morning, but a classroom meeting. And we were talking about working together, how we could use our creative thinking and our critical thinking and all these really important skills to work with a group, because that's what we were going into. And these kiddos walked in to their meeting. I had tarps laid out on the floor, and they were invited to break up in even groups to stand on these tarps. And they were challenged then to, as a group, work creatively, critically, and to solve this problem of how are they all going to stay on the tarp completely, not stepping off, not putting a hand off, and flip the tarp over. So this exercise really got them just wondering and curious and thinking creatively. Some of the things that came out of them really surprised me, and they really did a great job. Another way to get some of that creativity in your classroom through wonder is just knowing your kids, right? Interest inventories are a great way to do that. We tend to do those at the beginning of the year, not so much throughout the year, but I find that they are a very valuable tool throughout the entire school year. Just finding out what they're interested in, what projects have they always wanted to do. If they could pick anything, what would it be? And what topics do they want to learn about? But maybe it's not on the list, right, for the teacher. So just kind of opening that door for them. So if it's not a topic, maybe a problem. So what could they do if we just allowed them to kind of open that door? The creativity just seems to flow when they are right there to meet it, and it's their idea. Maybe it's a huge interest of theirs. So another start with wonder, just those open-ended questions that are going to build that creativity in their thinking and their curiosity. So in this picture here on this slide, these students were curious and they were wondering about flowers and bees and pollination, talked about it in a lesson, but you know, there's only so much talking can do. So they really got creative with this. We brought in flowers, which you can, any kind of flower, go outside of the schoolyard, pick a weed, it doesn't matter, but just so they could really get hands-on. And they were then deciding in their group, what are you going to do with this? What could you do to learn more about it, to teach others? And just, again, just their creative thought process was amazing. So they took it all apart into all of the pieces. They decided to make diagrams out of these flowers, and then they were able to really look at a bee up close and to see how they interact together. And this just sparked so much creative and critical thinking. It was amazing. So these open-ended questions can really set them up for that creative thought. Here we go. The second fast track is integrate. So integrate, I want to say first off, if you don't do a lot of STEAM in your classroom right now, integrating it into your curriculum, into your content, into maybe a unit, whatever you are working on, does not mean that you have to add a whole other thing. Integrating it is just that. So you can maybe find a stopping point in the lesson that you're doing or in the unit that you're working on and let them show you what they know, right? They can, in creative ways, and with the things you have in the classroom, show you what they're learning. And so here's some examples. If you're teaching measurement, you could do a real world design challenge where they are building something and then having to do the measurements. Maybe they're figuring out the area of something. So allow them to build it, allow them to measure it and to report out on it and have that connection while being creative in your classroom. If you're teaching buoyancy, maybe you can let them use different materials to build something that then they can either predict, is it going to sink or is it going to float? So they're doing so many different things there. They're thinking about the different properties of different materials. They are thinking about what you have taught them about maybe properties of water in class. And then they're able to work together with a partner or a small group to actually create something of their own to then predict and test. That one is a lot of fun and it really spans some grade bands with just a little bit of tweaking. Teaching soft skills. So this is something that is very important. So when I am introducing soft skills or skills to be successful, like perseverance or curiosity or self-direction, one of the activities that I like to do that gets them thinking creatively and really gets them just hands-on into the content is building a mascot. So I'll break the classroom up. They'll work in small teams to build a mascot that represents one of the skills that we are working on. And they'll build that mascot, they'll present that mascot, and it allows them to think through the skill and all of the learning we've done around it. Teaching ELA, this is probably one of my favorites. Doing a design challenge based off from a book. So if you are teaching upper L, let's say, and you're in a chapter book, you could do this several times throughout the book. You could start by creating something at the beginning of the book to represent what is happening in the story. And then as the story changes, you could change what you've created. There are a lot of ways to go through this. One of the resources that I referred to earlier with our sponsor supports this very well. So if you go visit our sponsor site, it fits right in with Integrate. So there's something on there that you can look through, books to build. There are some samples there, and it's a bunch of different books, some narrative, some nonfiction, some classic books that you might use in your classroom, and activities and guides and how you can build in little mini challenges that get your students working creatively, thinking creatively, and really having some fun around the content that you are covering. So it's really a great tool there. And like I said, there are free examples there, and just browse around and see what gets you excited and thinking creatively. All right, Integrate, another one. So just some examples here that I have listed for math, ELA, social studies, science, and another one for math there. So math to me just lends itself to so many creative things, and math is one of those places where I also feel like we could reach out to our students a little bit more and get them out of their seats and hands-on and doing some things creatively. So the picture I have here is a student, and I kind of opened the doors to my group of students and asked how they wanted to represent what they were learning. And they used magnifying glasses, bowl magnifiers. You see part of one here in the picture where you can put something underneath it and look through the top while it's on the tabletop, and then decide in a way that they were going to share out. They got so creative. You can see in the picture here just this detailed picture of the insect that this student chose, writing down a bunch of different things that they observed. So they were writing down how many hairs they saw, how many legs, how many eyes, all of this. Just super creative thinking. And when it is integrated what you're already doing in the classroom, it is just such a natural way for you as a teacher to then to be able to walk around and see what they're doing and how they are doing. All right. Our third fast track today is embrace simplicity, right? So teaching is complex, our days are complex, our days are so full, and to be able to approach something in a way that is going to seem doable is refreshing. So this one related to creativity is just using what you have. Oftentimes, I know me, when I first started teaching, I would think I needed all these very specific things to do something with my students. And then I learned over time that the students will literally use whatever you give them. They don't care what it is. They just want to get hands-on and then be creative and represent something that they're proud of, that they've learned about. So using what you have and not overlooking your everyday items that are just in your classroom. Empty toilet paper rolls, I used to have our custodian collect those out of the bathrooms for me. It was a great way to stock them up because they're expensive to buy, so I didn't buy them. Empty tissue boxes, delivery boxes, right? We have all these people ordering things online now, shopping online. There seems to be an endless supply of shipping boxes. the used paper from your classroom out of your recycling bin, plastic bottles, cups. You can go outside and collect nature and build with nature. And then I wrote on here the sink, because one of the roadblocks I thought I had run into as a teacher was not being able to do water activities in my classroom. And I just overlooked the fact that I had a sink in my classroom. I had to get a little creative on, yes, like I had to have the kids line up and use the sink to do whatever they were doing one at a time. So it turned into more of a station type of rotation, but it allowed them to interact with more things with something that I already had in the classroom. And another embrace simplicity I want to offer from our sponsor is just this basic list of things that I always try to keep or find to have in my classroom. And if you find this doc, if it's helpful for you and you want to put bins together in your classroom, there are free labels here. There's a free like checklist if you want to send it home to see if parents have any of this stuff. But having this stuff on hand just opens the door for you to be kind of just more impulsive when it comes to being creative in your classroom with your students, because you know it's just there if you need it, if the opportunity presents itself. The last slide for the Embrace Simplicity talks about mini challenges. So designing a hat that shades your eyes, building the tallest tower out of 20 index cards. This top right corner picture here is a picture of students doing just that. They have 20 index cards and they have to build the tallest tower within a certain amount of time. So you can let the kids get involved with these decisions, think about how they could do it, how much time they should have to do it, and it just really gets them engaged. Creating marble mazes from using paper strips. So again, these simple supplies. And marble mazes are really fun. I've built marble, just straight marble tracks out of one piece of paper, challenge the kiddos to use one piece of paper, cut it and fold it in whatever way they find best to make the longest paper track. And just the creative thinking and just hands-on opportunities there is really endless. Another thing I've done with just paper in my classroom that was very creative, and it had a secondary use, which was kind of cool. I gave every group of 2 students an 11 by 17 piece of construction paper, so colorful construction paper. And the challenge was to make the longest paper chain possible out of that piece of construction paper. So it was a little bit of a competition, but it also then decorated the classroom for the holidays. So that was super creative. You can do measurement with that. You can do like the area of the paper and they can figure out how to cut it, what width. Just a lot of opportunity there to get creative while still keeping it connected to the content. And then collecting nature to create collages to represent your learning. That is also something that you can really hook into so many of your content areas. And then lastly for this slide, don't rule out a little help. So I know people have mixed feelings about using AI in the classroom, but when you are in the middle of whatever you are teaching, if you're in the middle of a unit and you just feel like your kids need an opportunity to switch it up a little bit and get creative, you can prompt AI to give you a list of ideas, and then it is on you to choose which one of those is going to work for your classroom, for your students, and for your teaching style. So you could prompt it by saying, I am currently working on this standard with my 5th grade students. I have 20 minutes to do an engineering design challenge that connects to the learning. Please give me your top 20 ideas. It will spit those out. You can look through them, take them or leave them, but that is a really great way to just kind of help yourself out to make these connections where the kids can get hands-on and be creative in any content area. All right, fast track number 4, let the students lead. I want to start off by taking a minute to talk about this tarp picture. So these are the same kids that I talked about earlier on the tarp that did so well. They came in, there were multiple tarps on the floor, they all divided up into equal teams, right? So they come back into class, it's a different day, we're having our class meeting, And I'm asking them about what went well this week, just all of those regular things, like what are you interested in doing? And they went back to the TARP activity. So I said, okay, let's do the TARP activity, but let's do it differently. How can you guys work together to think of a new way to do this activity to help us work on those soft skills that we're continuing to work on? So we cut the number of TARPs in half, which doubled the sizes of the group. And this was all led by them. I had no idea how it was going to go. It didn't go great, but it was a very good learning experience for them to be thinking creatively on how to do something differently. And then it brought us back around to the conversation we were having about those skills to help us be successful. So it was a really challenging but great opportunity. So letting the students lead, they can lead in so many ways. Just giving them choice in the classroom about the size of the groups, what are they going to do in the groups, where are their strengths and weaknesses in that group that are going to allow them to be as creative as possible when they're doing that. Giving them options of what they're going to be doing, the materials, this is huge for the creativity. Just putting out a larger variety of things than you need, just so they can then connect with those materials in the way that works for their creative idea that's rolling around in their head. Letting them choose the format, how they present things, and how they approach things is huge. I did this recently. We were doing endangered animal reports, and the kids really, I gave them the criteria and constraints, what our goals were, and they took it from there. And the creativity that I saw in their presentations, how they decided to teach other people about their animal and the issues that it faced, really were incredible. And I attribute that to them having that ownership of their project and their ownership of teaching other people. They really got into it, really got excited. These kiddos here wanted to learn about insects. Now, we don't all have a bunch of insects in our classroom. Maybe some of us have some, we don't want them. But if we don't have the things the kids want, you can see here in this picture, these are printed pictures of insects. The kids are still using the science tools. They're still linking this to their science and math standards. They even do some writing about it. So just getting them to get involved with something that they are interested in, they can think creatively about it and really then do with it what they are led to do, whether by their personality or their group's vibe. So just really great ways to get the kids in there and making those choices, having that ownership, which is then going to allow them that mental freedom to be more creative. All right. Fast track number 5. This is celebrate process over perfection. Now, when I was creating this slide, it kept trying to autocorrect it to progress over perfection. And definitely intentionally wanted to say process over perfection. So for this fast track, we have to provide them a process that will give them some type of structure while they are working through whatever creative or critical thinking activity that they're trying to do. But many of you are probably familiar with the engineering design process. So that process always starts with a problem or something to solve or a question, and then you work through that process with your team or even on your own by making that plan and then having that plan come to life, testing it out. Does it work the way you wanted it to work? Making those observations and really then just thinking about what you observed and maybe making some changes, right? Refine it and do this process over and over again until you're able to solve the problem or answer the question. And depending on your grade band, you can just pick out a couple parts of this process if your students are working through these creative processes to maybe build something or represent something in some type of a hands-on way. So another part to celebrating that process over perfection is just focusing on that journey. A lot of pressure is either put on kids or they put it on themselves, that everything has to be right away. There is a right way to do something and there's a wrong way to do something. And to try to help them back up from that, because when they put that kind of pressure on themselves, their creative mind really comes to a halt. So focusing on that journey, what are you going to do first? What are you going to do next? What do you think is going to happen? What is that outcome going to be? And then just mistakes, celebrate the mistakes, celebrate the failures, model your own failures, right? I know I have some weaknesses in the classroom and my students saw me fail and they are the first ones to tell you, right? Like, oh, that's not right. But just to celebrate that, like, oh, yep, and just moving on and not letting it set you back. So, and helping them celebrate, pointing out like, wow, you're really pushing through. This is hard, but you've got this. And then just guiding themselves through that creative process on their own. And helping students see themselves maybe in a different light, not just a student in the classroom, but inventors, scientists, thinkers, and just emphasizing to them the process. All right. Some ways to normalize those mistakes, sharing stories about famous people that they might know of, right? That failed and failed and failed over and over again before they found success. Just, I've already talked to this, but modeling vulnerability, right? We all make mistakes, admit your mistakes, push through them, acknowledge them, and then praising effort, creating that effort, just so they know that whatever happens, whatever that end result is, it's going to be okay. And that, again, it frees them up to have that open, creative mind where they're going to be able to reach their fullest potential. All right, so hopefully some key takeaways for you guys today, after all of my talking, was that curiosity and wonder can open the doors to creative classroom. And if you give the students that space to connect with their learning, to be in charge of their learning, and let their curiosity and wonder soar, your classroom will inherently just become a more creative environment. And also very important, you don't have to start over. Start where you're at right now. If any of this sounds good to you, just see how you can weave it in, right? You don't have to put on the brakes. You don't have to change course. Just start where you're at and use what you have. The kids will roll with it. All right. And another survey here. Which fast track do you guys think you would try first? Which one seems interesting or doable in your classroom?
All right, Kim, they're still rolling in. I'll give it you guys have about 5 more seconds to get your answers in, and then I will close it out.
Thanks, Robin.
Okay. All right, Kim. So, interesting. So we have 3 in first place. So
Okay.
fast track 1, start with wonder. Fast track 3, embrace simplicity. And fast track 4, let students lead, are all at 29%, followed by track number 2, integrate.
Wonderful. Thank you. That is great. I'm so happy to hear that it's kind of all over the board and something connected with you guys out of these 5 fast tracks. So I just want to thank you for being here today, spending this half hour with me. I hope the rest of your day is wonderful. And again, go into that resource doc that was shared with you. Check out some of those resources I linked there and visit our sponsors site and just see all of the amazing things there that have been used by teachers, made by teachers, and things that I use every day in the classroom. All right, thank you so much.